All right, guys, welcome to episode 15. And today's episode, we're going to be learning about the first few steps in becoming a farmer. So the big three things to take away from this episode is going to be how are you going to keep costs low when first starting out as a farmer? What's the quickest and best way to learn how to become a farmer? And big hint here, guys, it's not going to college. And then the third and final thing is how, as a small startup farm, going to be able to compete with these massive, huge farms out there. So today, my guest is Daniel Salatin, and he's a third-generation farmer out at Polyface Farms, which is based in Virginia. And he and his entire family have been very vocal in putting information out online and at conferences, etc. In some of their, I guess you could say, revolutionary, but it's not really revolutionary. It's just traditional farming techniques that they have brought back to the farming community. He's a wonderful guy. He's very, very knowledgeable, and you're going to learn a lot in today's episode. So enjoy, guys.
Interviews with the best in their fields, teaching you how to excel in careers that don't require traditional college. You're listening to the College Alternative Podcast. Insider tips and advice, straight from the experts. And now, here is your host, James Christian.
Well, thanks for tuning in, guys, to the College Alternative Podcast. And today, I'm really excited to have Daniel Salatin on. And he's third-generation farmer out at Polyface Farms. And I know a lot of you guys are probably really familiar with Polyface Farms because they do a really great job at putting themselves out there at conferences, social media, really getting the word out about organic, alternative farming. But how you doing, Daniel?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me, James. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, awesome. Well, why don't you kind of just sort of introduce yourself here a little bit and kind of go into what you do and how you came about it?
Sure. Absolutely. No, well, I'm what most people call like middle-aged. I'm about 35, and I've been farming.
We're young, man. We're young.
Exactly. And I've been farming since I was just a little guy, and literally since I was, in diapers, essentially, working with my dad and here on the farm and with my family. And so I've literally done this my whole life, and I was homeschooled by my mom and, of course, my father as well, in many different parts. And then at the same time, went all the way up to, about high school, essentially. I call myself a homeschool dropout, so that's about as bad as you can get. And I just got to about high school. I said, forget this, I'm done with it. I'm a very calisthenic learner. I need to see something. I need to get my hands on it. I need to understand why I need to know it. And so when I was learning all these concepts and stuff, and I'm saying, when am I legitimately going to use this information with what I want to do? And I had no motivation for school. I was a late reader, didn't read till I was about 12 years old. And just because I had no motivation to read. Now, and then when I started doing some things, I'm like, okay, I need to read. I learned in like six weeks. I went from, almost no reading to reading at a good level in like 6 months. And so I've kind of always learned that way. Just when I needed to learn something, I really applied myself and I learned well. And so that's kind of where I am now. I'm big into mentoring, following people who know way more about something than you do. And that's one of the things that, brought me to where I am now. And so, I've farmed full time my whole life. I've tried a couple of different things, different vocations, for a short period of time, just kind of get my feet wet. Is that something I really want to do? But every time I've led back to farming, I feel like that's where I need to be. And that's where I'm, being successful and growing and flourishing. So here we are.
Nice. And the reason why I wanted to bring you on here is because, like I said before, you guys have been very, very vocal about putting yourselves out there in terms of, hey, this is who we are. This is exactly what we do. We like to help other people, like you said, that mentorship. And I think I don't know what your observations are, but it just seems like more and more people are getting interested in going back to farming, I guess you could say. Farming is becoming more of an interest out there. Yeah.
Sure. Well, I think a lot of people are getting very disenchanted with, this is like the second generation now. We're entering the You could be argued that's the fourth generation now away from the baby boomers. And some of the greatest, and that's of course the result of the greatest generation in the World War II era. And so as you look at them, and they were very much agrarian, had the agrarian parents, in the 20s and 30s. As they grew up, and so when you look at that and you realize that was what they came from, they were being encouraged to go to the city, get an easy job that pays well, and you don't have to milk the cows and feed the horses and all this stuff every day. And that's where people went. And now we're realizing that was it's a very as much as those roles and jobs that people do in the city are important. I'm not here to diminish any job, but I will say that the agrarian lifestyle is one of the most fulfilling, soul rewarding businesses, vocations, and lifestyles that you can take on, just because it has so many advantages, from a family orientation to a being in touch with your food and your land and your soil. And some people, I don't want to get in touch with dirt, and that's okay. There are different people, but the idea of having something, one of the big comments that I get from some new of our interns, we're going to get into the intern program here in a bit, but one of the big comments I get from them is, it's so great to do something in a day and be able to look back and know that it's going to be there tomorrow. That's so much more rewarding than just finishing out a spreadsheet and emailing it to somebody. And to be able to say, I built this fence, or I planted those trees, or I dug this garden, I fed those animals. That reward of something bigger than self is very difficult to grab a hold of in a Dilbert cubicle, time clock type business and lifestyle and vocation. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely.
And so I think that's what we're seeing. So it's a pendulum swing. The pendulum went way over here. Everybody ran to the city and got Dilbert jobs and cubicle jobs, and just filling out screen time. And now people are completely disenchanted with that. And so we're seeing a huge swing. Sure, it's not a majority of people by any stretch. There's still lots of people signing up for technical jobs and screen time jobs, I'll call them. But we're seeing a huge swing of the pendulum back the other way, where people want to get in touch with things that are real. They want to have a visceral relationship with things that matter, whether it be family or food or sustenance or community. And you can't get that from answering emails.
And I think you hit the nail on the head there too, because with my own family, both sides of my family, going back a generation or two to my grandparents and their folks, we had 50 to 100 acre farms.
Sure.
And unfortunately, those got sold off with that next generation. And now if my wife or I wanted to start it up, now we don't. It's hard. That's why I want to talk to you here is, hey, we'd like to get into it, but there's that generational gap as far as, like you said, that greatest generation had all that knowledge.
Sure.
And now we're trying to relearn it and trying to gain access to land and trying to start up farms, and it's a little bit difficult. So
sure, and this is the kind of information that was passed down in stories from grandfather. Think of a tribal aspect. These are the kind of information that you don't learn by taking a semester class.
Oh yeah.
And so whether it be watching the weather or how the stream flows or migrations or things like that, those are big things. Those are not things that you learn on an online class. These are things that you learn from generational knowledge passed down from grandfathers and fathers and uncles and whatever through generations. And so that's one of the reasons that this type of information is so hard to wrap our heads around sometimes, because it is something that we can't just get 1 + 1 always equals 2. There's so many variables.
Yeah, exactly. So you were talking a little bit about the pros of being a farmer. Seeing
Sure.
the fruits of your labor. seeing that fence getting built, selling off your chickens, actually getting a profit, from chick all the way to, fryer. What might some of the cons be going into this with your eyes open?
Sure. Well, it is labor intensive. I mean, it is work. You don't need a gym membership to do what I do. You're going to get your workout just by doing the morning chores. A lot of folks, I think, that are getting into this, even after reading some of my father's books, and he and I have a friendly spar over this sometimes, is, we have sometimes a reality of a false reality of people will come to farming and thinking, this is where I get up at like 8:30 in the morning and I drink my coffee and I go out and I check on the cows and have a nice leisurely stroll through the apple trees, and I come back and, kind of a very genteel.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Manor house, think of, Savannah, Georgia type style idea of it. And that's a very, we're not talking about that kind of lifestyle. We're talking about very much active involvement in it, labor requiring. So that's a con. I think that the hours can be very long. It is, as soon as you get animals and livestock specifically, your vacation time is not on Saturday and Sunday. The animals need to eat all the time. So it's like taking on a child, and there's lots of them. And, you can't just take a break. It's like having a baby, it's not something you can just put over to the side for a few days while you go visit Europe. It's something you have to do constantly. And so that's a realization that free travel and free time and things like that are something that don't happen as easily. Certainly you can get there, and certainly there are ways to schedule your operation. I mean, for us, we have the meat chickens, but we only do them seasonally. So we raise them from about April 1st through about the 1st of October. And then we don't have any meat chickens on the farm the rest of the year. Well, so that changes your workload a lot. And then you're able to do some extra things and different things and do that. So those would be some of the downsides. I think another big downside that I think you're going to touch on with some other questions is just the hurdles of entering into it from a knowledge perspective and from an investment perspective. Because, when you look at, I'm talking with a business guy right now and about something else, and he was saying, the concept when you're talking about farming, if I was going to do a business deal tomorrow and I was going to spend $500,000 and next year I'm going to net return $1 million, it's a very simple mathematic formula. But for farming, the value of the land is so disconnected from what it actually produces anymore that you can't raise enough product on a given piece of land to pay for it. And there's ways we can go about that, and I think that's going to be some questions later on. But that's a negative for sure. But the positives of being around family, to be able to have a direct impact on something that's going to be here for multiple generations, to be able to feed people good, healthy food, yourself healthy food, taking care of the environment, all of that thing happens just by farming. And so in our compartmentalized world, it's hard to wrap our head around that when typically, we go to our work to earn money, then we go and vacation to get relaxed, and then we go and we donate money to charity to do the good. And when you break it all down, it creates all of these different areas. Whereas if you do an agrarian lifestyle, yes, there are the downsides we talked about, but the upsides is you're accomplishing many, many of these different things that a lot of us do at once. And that's kind of cool.
And it's nice too, because I think, with YouTube being out there and you guys being out there, I think the curtain's been pulled back a little bit as far as this is my lifestyle and this is what I'm doing, and it's enjoyable. And yeah, you might have some cons there, like you said, but also more importantly, I think those pros of the family life and seeing direct results of your labor possibly can outweigh that. I would say outweigh that. It just depends on what you want out of life, I guess.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. So like I keep on harping here, you guys have been very, very vocal online and in the farming community. So what does Polyface Farm stand for? What has driven you guys, your father and yourself, to be so vocal about farming practices?
Sure. Well, I know that, very, very early on, Dad created a mission statement. This is, long before I even existed. And we still focus on it to this day. And that is to create an ecologically, environmentally, and economically enhancing agriculture and facilitate its duplication throughout the world. So, small goal. And so that has driven us, in our decision making, to be educational, to be mentors, to be open with our information, to write books, to do speeches, to do stuff like this. And so our whole goal has been to research and development stuff, get them up to a profitable economic level that makes sense for people in a lot of areas, and then get that information out there to people. And so that has been a huge driving factor for us for a long, long time, and still is.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing here too is, I think by you putting yourselves out there so much, it really has helped your farm. And correct me if I'm wrong here, it really has helped your farm, driven your farm business-wise too, in terms of possible business deals or people knowing about your farm and wanting to do business with you and buying your products?
Sure. Realizing that everybody is marketing always. If you're in business, you have to be marketing. And so whether you become one of the nation's leading scripted reality shows like Duck Dynasty to sell a duck call, or whether that's one way to become to be marketing, is to do something like that, or whether you write a book. Most people write a book or do become a YouTube channel or something. There's lots of ways to create a tribe in our culture today. Whether it be from a Instagram links to podcasts, to books, to all these downloads, all the different ways. There's lots of ways to create a tribe, a following. And so if you're in the business of marketing, you're going to jump onto what works for you. Mm-hmm. And so we never envisioned, I just read through the mission statement, but our goal was not to be, the go-to farmer across the country. That was not our goal. Our goal was to be Our goal was to be regenerative to the land that we were on. Our goal was to be a benefit to the health and the well-being of our community, and to raise a family and pay the bills. That's mm-hmm. That was the goal. Inside that mission statement. And so the fact that we're here now means that you got to be careful about what kind of mission statement you write, because so here grandiose. We are. But that's, our goal is to market ourselves and in that way. And so that's one of the things that has brought us to this point, is because we are marketing, whether it be our product or our name or our brand or whatever, we do look for ways to market.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think your mission statement, the way you guys put yourself out there, really hits a chord with people too. People definitely know when somebody's putting out BS and doesn't believe in what they do, and I think people do know the opposite too. If somebody actually is passionate and wants to help other people, I think they definitely respond to that. And I think you guys are touching a nerve on a lot of people, a community of people, and saying, hey, these guys value the same things I value.
Well, thank you. We certainly try to do that every day and strive to do that, and it's a blessed life, and it's been a fun ride.
So for those farms though that are following your lifestyle or following kind of the same sort of pathway that you guys are choosing to take with your farm here, but aren't putting themselves out on YouTube or doing books or things like that.
Sure.
I would say just very few farms are able to do that, right?
Sure.
So what was it like before your farm was famous?
Right. Right. Well, that's a good question. No,
Yeah.
everybody doesn't have that. Well, and realizing the fact that everybody has their own unfair advantage. And so that's the one thing that we tell people all the time. You don't have to be gifted in speaking like Joel Salatin. You don't have to be a gifted writer. You can do it other ways, and everyone has their own unfair advantage, and everyone has a story to tell. And so you need to figure out what's the best way for you to tell your story and to market yourself. And that's where, some people do it one way and some people do it another way. And so for us, again, when we marketed stuff before, we gave out samples. We still do that to this day. I mean, when we're actually selling food, our idea is to, give out samples, let the food do the talking, let the meat do the talking, speak for itself. We give out a ton of samples and people just love those. They can come back and they're like, man, that was the best sausage, chicken, beef brisket, whatever, that I've ever had, and I need to have more of it. And so there's sometimes this is not, some people don't like this analogy sometimes, but it's I read a book called Rework, and in it one of the chapters is market like a drug dealer, in that you give away stuff, get people hooked, and then they have to come back to you to get more. And so as maybe as narcissistic as that as inappropriate as that analogy might be, it makes a lot of sense to a lot of people, and that you get it. And so that's the way we marketed stuff. We still do that to this day, and anybody can do that. And everyone has, if you were to sit down and whether you go through your phone and your contact list, or you think about all the people that you run into on a weekly basis, those are all potential customers. And, whether it be at a grocery store or at your church or at your civic organization, your bank, all of the things that you do on a regular basis. I mean, most of us, unless you're a complete hermit, have social interaction with somebody on a regular basis. And so those people, my grandfather used the word, every bush is a burning bush, meaning everybody out there is a potential customer. And so let's look at that in that way. And so whether you're going to the bank or going to pick up a power tool or something, those people could be customers. And so how can you leverage all of your social interactions to do that? And so that's what we did early on. And, out of, I don't know what the percentage was, but out of a certain number that you touch, just like you do in any marketing, you get a small return. I mean, whether it be Pepsi-Cola or Coca-Cola, they run Super Bowl ads, but a small percentage of people go and buy those products in relation to the number that see those ads. And so same here, but you're just doing it at a small scale. And but over time, it's effective. And one of the models that we live by is that you can never outgive your customer. And we found that to be true every single time. You give away $100, it comes back tenfold. And just every time you give away product and give out samples and talk to people and shower them with blessing, it just gets poured back to you. And so we've never found that to be wrong, and just but that's how we started. And there's success stories all over the nation or even the world now of people, getting started. They don't have books, they don't have, a speaking circuit, but they're successful farmers, and they're, raising family and, having the lifestyle they want, selling food to their community.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think, like you're saying, that just talking to people and marketing yourself that way. I mean, if you are passionate about what you do and you're passionate about and have pride in your product, I think it should be fairly easy to say, hey, I'm on blank farm and I'm raising these amazing, this amazing product here. Why don't you check it out?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. And the other thing here too is the reason why I have the podcast on is, we are interviewing guys like you who are experts and guys who are successful in their industry here, but it's not necessarily following your direct path just because you guys are doing books and these other avenues. Like you were saying before, the big takeaway here is find your own way of doing things. Find your own success. Don't just copy somebody else.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Find the gold nuggets and use what works. You bet.
Mm-hmm. Because just because you're a great speaker or your dad's a great speaker or something like that doesn't mean that you want to get up in front of 2,000 people.
Exactly. That's correct.
One-on-one interactions. Yeah. Exactly.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Cool. So I guess the next question here is, there are a million reasons to do alternative farming like we were talking about before, healthier family, more in touch with family, more in touch with your environment, etc. But from an economic standpoint, would it be easier to go and safer to go like the traditional route, just monoculture, which would be a single crop planted? It seems like you're kind of facing an uphill battle here. Correct me if I'm wrong here. Hopefully, I am wrong. But
Sure, yeah, and I would definitely, I would be happy to debate anybody who would say take that as the only way, because I would think that's very wrong. My grandfather got into this type of farming he was a CPA, essentially a bookkeeper and an economist, and so he got into this for economic reasons. He said, when you look at a business idea, you want to keep your overheads as low as possible. Well, when you go into a monocrop operation, or even just if you say most conventional agriculture, we I don't want to paint too wide of a brush, but typical large scale monocrop or mono livestock, single species livestock operations are very capital intensive. Large expense cash outlays before you turn $1 in sales.
Oh, really? See, I didn't know that. Okay.
So it's typical. I mean, realizing that a typical, a poultry house. Let's just take a poultry house for example. A poultry house is multi thousands of dollars, and it's called vertical. As you have vertical integration, meaning that you get your loan from the same place that is that's selling you the poultry. You get the feed from the same place that's selling you the poultry. I mean, it truly is. I own, the old song of I sold my soul to the company store is very real today. It's not, we're not mining coal anymore, and we're not working for the masters, but we're very traditional agriculture is very much enslaved to the large vertical integration operations, and it's it all can be traced back to about half a dozen companies. That are the major players that work this. So to stay on point, from an economic standpoint, we view this as the only way to be truly economically viable, and to be small scale, to start with a small amount and be able to grow. The problem with a large scale poultry house, you have to buy the whole thing. With our poultry shelters, you can start with one and raise 50 chickens tomorrow. And then next year you can raise 4 houses or 5 shelters or 6 shelters or 20 shelters. It's totally the concept is size neutral success. All right, and that's a huge component. Realizing that we've heard the term "get big or get out." We want to be size neutral. We want this to work in pick your third world country of choice, fill in the blank, where they have nothing, and you can do 25 chickens and be successful because the overhead is so low. And so when you talk, so many times farmers have not adopted the business principles that are true for every other business. They think, well, farmers are different. Well,
yes.
We're a business.
Yeah.
We're not different. And so my grandfather said, look, as soon as you start pouring cement, as soon as you start building infrastructure, as soon as you start investing multiple, generational debt, you are doing 2 things. You are one, making the operation very inflexible, because suddenly when you pour that cement or you sign that multi-generational debt load, you are not able to change with a great idea, with the next great idea. Imagine if I said the phone you had today had to last you 20 years. Okay.
Yeah.
We get laughed out of the room, of course. But the concept in farming is that we sign an agreement with a vertical integrated company to raise poultry in virtually the same type concept for 20 years. Well, suddenly that makes us completely inflexible to the great ideas that come along, virtually every day in our country. And so that's number one. The second thing is that it makes you completely locked in to that type of operation, in the fact that you have a large overhead. And so you have to be big to generate enough flow and throughput to pay for this large overhead. I mean, think of the large big box stores. I mean, they turn over massive amounts of dollars at minuscule profits to pay for the massive overheads. And so when my grandfather looked at this, he said, look, and these are true today. We said, look, we have to keep our overheads low and our margins high. That's business 101.
Yes,
okay.
exactly.
And so when we look at that from a farming perspective, just to realize that most farmers are in the commodity business and very little margin is in commodity. Commodity is stuff that lots of people can get into, and it doesn't affect the overall price very much. I could go out tomorrow, plant 1,000 acres of corn and harvest it next fall, and it wouldn't make one bit of difference on the global corn market. Not 1/10 of a cent. That's a commodity. And so there's a lot of a quote unquote safety net there because I can plant it and farmers look at it, I can grow it, I can do it, and the industry will always buy it. But we're not guaranteed any price whatsoever, and we have no control over the end result. And so to say that from an economic standpoint, getting started on a small the reason you say that as you alluded to earlier, that all the small farms are now being bought up or sold off was because they're going with the concept of getting bigger or getting out. But that's because they're in the commodity mindset. To get into the alternative mindset of keeping your overheads low, don't buy that $1 million combine. Don't buy it at all. Use something totally different. Do grass instead and just feed your cows grass instead of corn or something like that. There's lots of ways to do that. And so we feel like that this type of agriculture is truly the only way to be a small operation and be economically viable, and be a big operation and be economically viable when the truth is said.
But it seems like when you're small, but you're trying to be the Walmart, you're going to get swallowed up by the Walmart.
Absolutely. You can't be small and buck the decisions or make and throw off the principles of big business. And you can't say, okay, we're going to make our decisions for our small business with the same paradigms as a big business. And there's a great book. It's called Little Giants, and has 10 concepts for how little giants stay small. They have no plans to be huge, but they're how they stay small and stay effective in an economy and in a worldview that is always wanting you to get bigger.
Nice. Okay, so learning to farm. So let's get on to the next kind of topic here of learning to farm. So now it's kind of nice for you because you're third generation here. So like you were talking about before, this isn't something you can just learn in a classroom. Essentially, this isn't something that you just can conceptually or read and be able to do automatically. How did you learn to farm here? It was passed down to you from generation to generation?
Absolutely. I learned from generation to generation. I learned by doing. I learned by following. They say the best time to learn a language is when you're just a little kid, because you can just be adaptable and learn things. That goes for memorization and all sorts of things. Same thing with this. You're a sponge when you're young, and you just take in all of this information. Even if you're not really doing it, you're following along, and it just becomes a habitual, a muscle memory kind of thing. I saw I saw my parent or mentor do this 1,000 times, and now it's my turn to do it, and I can just do it because I saw them do it 1,000 times. And so that's where I learned for sure. And like I said, I learned a lot from trial and error, of course, learning by doing, but also from mentors who have gone on, before me and have done something. And so you can, glean from their resources as well.
Yeah. Speaking of, learning from a young age, I know my grandfather, he used to milk, 50 cows every morning. And so, and when he finally was in his 80s and he got to do this again, he just started ripping it out. Like, that's amazing to me.
And when you think about our culture, we think about and that starting small and starting young. We have rules in our country now. You can't even pick up a power drill until you're 16. And those are things that have now disconnected our young people from anything meaningful work. And I don't mean that from, washing. I mean, yeah, okay, they can wash dishes, they can do household chores and things like that, all of which, my kids do, I did, is very critical. But the idea of getting involved in a vocation, and learning a vocation, and that's two faceted. One is we have to have something that they can do that is valuable to the business at a young age, and we have to have an environment that's safe for them to be in at a young age. And when you think about, augers and silos and chemical fertilizers and things, you don't want a toddler out there with you.
No toddlers next to the grain silos.
Yeah,
No.
yeah, exactly. That's a recipe for disaster. And so, part of it is the mentality you need to have, or the paradigm and the practices that you put into place to have this done. And so, that's why my dad has the book Family Friendly Farming. Create an environment that is family friendly where you can get started at a young age. Because the problem is, if you wait till a son or daughter is 18 years old and say, okay, now you're graduated from high school, now you can come work with me. Typically, they have other interests by then.
Oh yeah.
And so that's starting young is so key.
Yeah. So, but not everybody's going to have the resources that you had, as far as
Sure.
your dad or your grandfather, having a farm for that. So what other type of resources for learning how to farm are out there for people?
Excuse me. Well, I mean, in addition to certainly the books and videos and things that farms like ours put out there, there is a desperate desire for willing and teachable young people, specifically in farming, but in most vocations as well. And I really appreciate the concept of this podcast, from the idea of realizing there's a lot of vocations out there that do not require or might not be the best way for informational exchange as the typical college educational concept.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so there's a lot of those out there, and farming is one of those. And so I think, looking at the kind of the next question is, do colleges do an adequate job of teaching people to farm? Yes, they teach you some of they teach you an incredible level of the facts, that a cow is this much, parts of microbial, breakdown, put all the scientific jargon here, to create a plant. Create a plant, puts off X number of CO2s and brings back in CO2, all this stuff. Okay, okay. But the idea of, okay, now I'm out in the middle of a field. What do I do? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
that hands-on, boots on the ground education. Think about the carpentry and the construction vocation. Sure, you can learn that a 2x4 has X. You can be an engineer. But the idea of putting a 2x4 in place and nailing it into a wall, that you have to learn in a vocational setting, and that's what's important. And so I think that those resources. So how do you get out there and learn? And I think that the internships or volunteering or getting started small. And I mean small, literally like in your backyard. Get a couple of chickens. Plant a tomato plant. That's small.
See if you even like it without.
Exactly. And that's the beautiful thing about this. You don't have to go out and buy 1,000 acres. You can start with your backyard. You can start with you can go down to your farmer's market and talk to farm vendors and say, can I come out and I will do anything you ask me for a day. I will volunteer. You tell me what to do. And there are, the idea of a willing, teachable attitude, spirit out there is beyond. The need for that is beyond words in so many vocations, and farming as well. So what are the resources out there? There's incredible conferences, farm conferences you can go to. There are resources like what you're creating here. There's podcasts, there's videos, there's books. But I can't understate that mentor relationship that goes on, with someone who is a master in their craft with a willing student. And as I referred to earlier, how quickly I learned to read when I wanted to. There is so many studies out there from the scientific and even the educational field that how much faster we learn things when there's that motivation. And so realizing that when we have that motivation to learn something, partnering a successful master with a willing, interested student, the information gets exchanged much more effectively than in a classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And now there are just to put the disclaimer out there, there are fields that require classroom education. You're going to go be a physicist or an engineer. You need to go to the classroom. Okay, that's great. But when you're talking about hands-on, these vocational type life or jobs, they are. I would argue, I would be happy to argue the case that there's much more effective information exchange partnering master with trainer or with a student than it is to put a bunch of them in a classroom and teach them book knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah. And I think the books thing is great for continuing education. If you're going to be a master of your craft, you're going to want to always be continuing learning here. But like you said, that the conferences as well for the community aspect and hooking up with peers, but that mentorship. So you're saying for not necessarily a person that's in a really rural environment, go to a farmer's market, see who's selling, or do a Google search, real quick Google search. People are putting stuff up on YouTube now. See a farm that you might like and approach them. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. I mean, we I don't want to jump ahead of the questions and the thoughts, but the concept of realizing that we have, we took 10 interns this year for a 5-month period. They're going to be 5 months period on the internship, and we can talk about that specifically here in a minute. But
let's go into that.
So for us, what does our internship program look like? Well, we have we select anywhere from 9 to 11, pretty much just from how we have a fairly strict student to teacher ratio is what we try to go for. And so we have about 4 to 5 teachers, and we don't want any more than about a 2-to-1 ratio from a student teacher ratio. Okay, so we have myself, a farm manager, and a couple of apprentices, and the apprentices are someone who have done the intern program and are now staying on for a longer period of time, kind of a master's degree, if you will. And so if you think about the intern as freshman English, then the apprenticeship is your PhD or your doctorate as you move forward on these things. So they have already. So the internship starts May 1. It's 5 months and runs through September. And then from that they can stair step up to the apprentice, which is another 12 months from October to October. So
Nice.
If someone has completed the internship and the apprenticeship, they will have been on Polyface for 17 months. With a few breaks here and there as they've worked in their time, but that's the concept, and it's immersion. It's 100%. They're here. They do everything with me and with us that I do. We say every job is sacred. There's no less important work. It's just what your skill set is involved in. So just because you might be scrubbing down some chicken totes, for example, that carried some chickens in them yesterday, and I'm out setting cross fences, it doesn't mean either job is less important. It just means that that's your skill level and this is my skill level. And your goal is to be very competent and incredibly excel in this skill set so that you can move to the next skill level. And that's my goal, is to move you from wherever your starting point is, and all of them come from different walks of life. We take some farmers, we take non-farmers. You don't need to be a farmer to be an intern here. We just want a teachable attitude and someone who's eager to learn and really, really is passionate about farming. And so it's an immersion, and that's a real critical aspect. It's not a 9 to 5. It's not a 4 days a week. It's an immersion, and that is something that's very, very critical to talk about when you're getting involved in something. Now, the other thing is it's 5 months. Realizing that if you come for 5 months and you were in Sacramento, California, doing a tech job, and you said, "Man, I'm going to change my vocation. I'm going to get out in the country. I'm going to do farming," and you get accepted to our internship. Hey, in 5 months you say farming's not for me, I can't stand it, I just want to go and support farmers who are doing a good job, I want to go back to my job. Great. What have you lost? You've invested 5 months of your life. You have an incredible appreciation to food and for food and where it comes from, and another walk of life that you never would have known about, and you probably have muscles that you didn't know were there before, and so that's all you've lost, and you haven't lost multi-generational debt going into business, farming, buying property, buying infrastructure, tractors, whatever, and you haven't lost anything, and that's the beauty of an internship is that you can, I mean. There's other vocations that have internships that you can go and follow along with things and decide if this is really what you want to do. And that's the beauty of them, is that you can really test the waters and say, is this the vocation for me, before you're neck deep in it.
Well, I think it's not just loss. I mean, you're gaining all that skill and that knowledge too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, and I use loss tongue in cheek. You bet.
Oh, yes. And is it a paid internship? Are they staying on the farm?
Sure.
Housing? What is
for
some of
immersion?
the
They
details?
do stay on the farm. We have bunk style housing. We've got a kind of a bunkhouse for the young fellas and a bunkhouse for the young ladies. Each one of those facilities has a kitchen, of course, kitchen and bath and everything for them. They fix their own breakfast and lunches on their own, and then we eat our evening meal 5 days a week in a common area. We have the prepared meals. We actually have someone who prepares meals. Now, when we started, of course, realizing again, trying to drop this down for someone just getting started. We started with one apprentice, and started with that, and they ate dinners with the family. And I grew up as a teenager having these other people around and learning from them and them learning from me and different things. And so that works out wonderful. But now we have a larger operation and we have the bigger teachers and more students, and so we actually have a chef that fixes those dinners, and so we all eat together as a community, and that's a great thing. It is those of you who have college debt know that education is very expensive, and so we don't. It's a very nominal paid. You're not going to walk away with very much money. It's a very low income, but it's rich in education. So we call it an internship, and we invest a lot of time in teaching, as opposed to where if it was a job, we'd have to pay you, and we wouldn't teach you very much. And so the trade-off is, okay, I'm leaving here with a wealth, and there's lots of ways to acquire wealth, and so we say that this is a knowledge acquiring operation. So no, it's a very low, essentially stipend and room and board. They're not paying us, but you should come out even at the end of this. You shouldn't have to spend any money, but at the end of the day, it is an education investment for the knowledge.
I mean, if you could put a monetary value on the experience and the training that you're getting, that's what you're coming away with, whatever monetary value you put on that. So, and then what are you looking for in an applicant?
Well, if I told you, then we might not have a good podcast. No. As I alluded to earlier, there is not a cookie cutter answer to that. Yeah. We take young ladies, we take young men, this year we have someone from Wales, Europe. We have someone from Chile. We have them from all over the world. But the big thing that runs true for, and this is not about farming. This is about anything. Are you teachable? Do you have a good attitude? Are you more interested in what's going on around you? Are you situationally aware? Are you more interested in what's going on around you than you are about the latest Snapchat that popped up on your phone? Those are the things that will get you lots of jobs, not just farming jobs. And that's the beauty of, unplugging, getting out and doing something with your hands, and getting involved in something real. And so those kind of skill sets will get you lots of places and be effective lots of ways. And so those are some of the things that we look for in an applicant. There are others that I don't divulge to anybody. Those are the ones that we keep close to our chest. But having an eager spirit, being teachable, those are things that are great to learn and know how to do no matter what you're wanting to do with your life.
Okay. Yeah. So figure out how to demonstrate that I'm motivated to do this job and that I'm teachable, and then put that. Okay.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. So you were saying before you become an intern, you become an apprentice, you go through the program here, and then you kind of almost strike out on your own here. So what are the various types of farming that your type of farming kind of segues into, and what might be the best to start to get into first?
Well, and that's a great. We have a lot of different applicants, and what I'm getting at is we have a lot of people who are interested in the food industry. We've had chefs. We have had, and so just because you do a Polyface internship doesn't mean you go out and start raising and processing chickens. Now there is that, of course. We have quite a few of those. What we tell you is that if you come for a Polyface internship, you're going to be able to leave with the information to start and raise a poultry operation, both turkeys, meat, chickens, and egg layers right off. If you stay for the apprenticeship, you're going to get into hogs and beef cattle for sure. And so, as an intern, you're going to get a glossary of that. Again, freshman English, but we're going to really get into your education later on as you begin to pick your major, if you will, later on in your education, and that's what the apprenticeship is for. But we've had chefs, we've had dietitians. People who want to become like nutritionists. We have had people that are wanting to get into ministry and want to be able to feed themselves and their community and view farming as a way to minister to their community and make contacts in impoverished areas, and then be able to spread the gospel like as missionaries. So that's just a smattering of different things that people have gotten into. That people would like to get involved in. But for us, people go out, they start their own farms. From a farming perspective, they go home to maybe family farms. They go and work on rented farms. So they go rent farms and work on those. They don't actually own them. We have some farms that we rent, and they can become managers and subcontractors for us and raise stuff. So there's lots of different fields that they can get into after they've done the internship and have a base of education. Wow.
Okay. See, yeah, that sounds amazing. See, I had no clue that your program kind of sort of started initially at poultry, and then if you want to stay on, you kind of go into this area.
It definitely builds on it. It builds on itself. You bet. It does build.
Nice. That's wonderful. And do a lot of other I don't know. I mean, do a lot of other farms have internship programs of this type, or
it is becoming much more? It is becoming much more common and very popular. So much to the point that my wife actually started a website called eagerfarmer.com.
Okay.
And it's something where you can go, and there are other websites out there who are doing similar, but nothing that's doing quite this specific. But this is where farms can list opportunities to become interns or become apprentices or what have you. And if you're a young, or not say young at heart, doesn't matter. We've had I shouldn't put an age limit on it, but if you're a person who is interested in farming, you can list an ad and say, hey, here's my strengths, here's my background, and it's very, very affordable. We built it not to make money. We built it to make relationships. And so the concept is, how can we get people together and create a relationship? So that's one of the things is eagerfarmer.com that you can go and list. And again, it's free to peruse. You can look at all the sites and make contacts there. If you're wanting to become an intern, you can do that. And one of the things that I would encourage here, I'm going to take just 1 second to talk about this.
Go for it.
Don't invest a little bit more time in something than short term. If you go and visit a farm for just a couple days or even a couple weeks, you get a smattering of information, but you don't really learn things about that situation. You need to be there for extended period of time. So that's one of the reasons we don't do any type of education from a hands-on standpoint, less than the 5 months. That might be a little extreme, might be a couple months. For a gardening perspective, might be 3 or 4 months. But we want people to see the entire cycle of something. And so from start to finish, we want them to see the whole poultry operation, which is May through September. And so that's important that they get the whole picture. Don't just drop in for a couple of days or a couple of weeks and then bounce out. You need to really get invested and see it from start to finish as you look at the different intern options.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's one thing to be on a farm and wake up at, like you said, 8:30. And have that nice breakfast and then go out onto your farm. It's quite another to be 5 months out there and you're waking up at 5-6 o'clock in the morning doing work.
Yes, absolutely. It has to come. It has to come habit, and until it becomes a habit, you're just visiting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So that's really, really neat, though, that you're getting a lot of different people and they're kind of just segueing off into a lot of different areas. And I think that's nice just because it helps, I guess, propagate this concept of farming out there. Is, hey, I was here, I was able to do this. And, that nutritionist that you were talking about before, she can start talking or he can start talking to his clients about this. It's not just staying behind that curtain, I guess you could say.
Correct. Yeah, it's not about just, raising chickens or raising animals or planting beets and radishes. It's about, the whole concept of changing a food paradigm in our culture, changing the food culture of our U.S. And globally, and you need everybody involved in that. So lots of different skill sets are important.
So for small farmers to compete with the massive farms out there, like you were talking about before, is finding a niche market to get into really important?
Well, yeah, and from the standpoint that realize that anything big has weaknesses. As soon as something becomes big, it becomes inflexible. And so then you can become a speedboat next to an aircraft carrier. Certainly the aircraft carrier has its upside, but it's not flexible. And it has, a very small facet of use, very narrow use. Whereas, speedboat, you can do all sorts of different things with it. And that's a great concept. Realize that as soon as a knight's perfected armor, somebody invented gunpowder. and when you realize when you look back at cultural history, realizing that's happened as soon as a one paradigm has created what they consider its apex of successfulness, there is always something or someone out there who's created the next breakthrough and renders that old way of doing something obsolete. And that's where we view ourselves. We are that speedboat. We are that gunpowder. We are that new thing that is created by this huge, global food industry. Now there's lots of things that are missing, and for us, we would say it's nutrition and health in the food. And so we are looking at how we fill those gaps. I mean, there's holes, but the bigness creates inflexibility and holes. And whether you want to attack the hole of nutrition or local food or knowing your farmer or ecologically sustainable in your environment or and the list goes on about the holes that you can attack in the big food system. Whatever fits you the best, that's where you can create your niche. And if that means you're raising, emu or quail instead of regular poultry, that's a niche too. But it doesn't mean that. You can attack holes and raise the same product. You can raise beef, pork, chicken, turkey, same as the industry, but there's lots of other weak links that you can attack within that big operation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Whether that's the type of raising techniques that you use or the type of feed you use or exactly. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you were talking too about these guys that complete the apprenticeship program and they're going on to rented farms.
Yes.
Now, would you recommend somebody go out, learn about farming, and then immediately buy land and invest in land, or rent land?
No, yeah, I would
What
say with
goes
the
with it?
price of land right now, again, that creates a big overhead and albatross on you that drives your decision making. So, if you want to buy a house and a few acres to have a home base, yeah, sure, everybody needs a place to lay their head at night and have something that's their own if you can afford it. But with the portability of our farming methods, you don't have to be on the same farm every year. You don't have to be in the same place every year, and you don't have to own the land to do it. And so there's a lot of symbiotic relationships between our like pastured poultry and our portable poultry and a cattle operation. They can still do the exact same cattle operation they did. It's not going to affect them one bit. And you can raise a successful pastured poultry operation. They get the cattle guy gets or person gets the manure, which they typically would buy anyway. They get it for free because your chickens are running out on their pasture, and you get to use their land for essentially free because it's not hurting their operation at all. Total win-win. And it's an opportunity to do that. And with the field shelters that we use, you can put them on a flatbed trailer or take them apart, put them in a pickup truck or whatever, and move them to another location. If that rental place doesn't work out or you find a better place. And so, excuse me. And so that's one of the options of that portable, small infrastructure that creates an unfair advantage in renting land or in finding small pieces of land that are unused.
Nice. And are there any other hidden costs to running a farm? Now, I'm sure you're a big proponent of keep costs low here. Try alternative farming techniques like renting land, like we were talking about before. But what
Sure.
might be some hidden costs?
Well, I mean, we don't have a lot of the typical costs, and that's really key. But unfortunately, we're not able to avoid the cost of doing business, like health insurance. Start hiring people, then you have workman's comp. Just those are the kind of the things that. And those are the things that you do. I mean, one of the hidden costs that most people think of, and that's paying yourself. All of our business models pay all of the labor. Now, some of the interns don't get actually paid their cash value, but the business plan is figuring in paying them at a competitive wage for doing what they do. Now, that money goes to offset the time that I spend with them in teaching, or my dad spends with them in teaching, or the mistakes that they make through education, because they make mistakes. Everybody's learning something, makes mistakes, as opposed to bringing somebody in on a permanent basis, as an employee or a subcontractor or something like that. So those are some of the hidden costs that come through with it. But paying yourself is a key component. Most farmers just think, hey, if I paid all the bills and I have money in the bank, then I'm successful. But no, you got to pay yourself a competitive wage as opposed to just working for free.
Yeah, because then you're not a farmer. I mean you're not going to be a farmer for very long if you don't pay yourself.
Correct. Yeah. You're volunteering,
or you're a hobbyist, I guess you would say.
Sure.
Nice. And so how can these small farms really market themselves out to the communities? Yeah,
and with social media and with with the networking of that right now, that's the huge unfair advantage that we have. One of the things is that people love to be connected now. We want to belong to something, and
that tribe that you were talking about
exactly,
before.
and that's what's so important with the social media is to be able to say, hey, with the chicken that you're serving your dinner guest tonight. Here's what it did, and here's what it did for me, and here's how it got there, and here's what it's about. And you can do that whether it be through some YouTube videos, like even something we're doing today. It can be through a YouTube. It can be through a blog. All sorts of different things that you can use to create that relationship. We call it relationship marketing, and creating those connections within things within the customer producer relationship. And so those are some of the real ways that we've done things now. But the spin-off of that is creating these Metropolitan buying clubs, and that's kind of my wife's baby. So that's another podcast for another day. But
yes.
what that works is that you can do it through again, People can go on our website, just like we use polyfaceyum.com. We don't ship anywhere. We deliver to a small, region about 100 miles within our farm. But if you happen to be in that bioregion, you can go to polyfaceyum.com. And in the season, we started up about the middle of February. And in the middle of February, it becomes active, and you can go in there, shop for stuff. You can buy a T-bone steak. You can buy half a cow. You can buy 2 chickens. You can buy all sorts of different stuff. And then we deliver it to your area on a regular scheduled basis. And what that means is, and it frees me up to farm, and it frees you up to shop. And I don't have to, shop with you. You can just do your shopping on your own time while I'm out farming. And then now it's even more effective than a farmer's market booth, because I don't have to stand there. I don't have to go there. And so I know that when I go to your area and deliver, maybe James, you're my host there in your area, and I deliver to your house, and you tell all your friends, and I work on making those connections, and we get a whole bunch of orders together. I show up at your house. All those friends come, they take their meat, I take their money, and I go home, and I know that when I get there, I am going to sell X number of dollars of stuff because it's already pre-sold, as opposed to a farmer's market or something of that nature, or a retail store. Yes. I might sell a bunch. It might rain. I might sell nothing. And,
but you are there. You're stuck there for 8 hours.
Exactly. Yep. And so in this case, I know, all right, I'm going to spend 3 hours of my time driving to your house and delivering this, but I know that I'm going to bring back X number of dollars, and you can make decisions to whether whether that justifies your time or not.
Yes.
Ahead of time.
Yes.
And so that's a huge, the Metropolitan Buying Club. It's not a co-op. It's not a CSA. It's just something you can shop online like you would, any of the other big name stores, but it's within a bioregion. It's small, and I come straight to you, and it's very effective. It allows me to get the margin I need. It allows you to have a connection with your farm and your food, and you don't have to have the huge commitment driving out to my place. And frankly, it's much more ecological and environmental for me to take one trip to your area than for 20 of you to drive to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so it makes sense that way too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just very, very financially or fiscally responsible, from a bookkeeping standpoint here. I've got this many dollars, I've got this much time. It's very, very much easier to calculate out, which is, amazing. And then I guess kind of the final question here is what do you think the future, and this is just a big concept question to end with, but what do you think the future of farming is for this nation?
Oh goodness! If I knew that, I wouldn't be farming, I guess. But
what would you like the future of farming to be for this?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I would like to see farming in our society. I would like to see the general public be much more aware about where their food comes from. If you want to eat at a fast food place, and that's your decision, fine. But as Michael Pollan alluded to in his book Omnivore's Dilemma, at least be informed. Realize that as you make that decision, here are the ripple effects of my decision. And I think I'd like to see food buyers become much more educated about their food and where it comes from. They don't all have to buy it from farms like me. They can go shop at big box stores. That's their decision. It's a big world. I understand that not everybody's suddenly going to change over and buy, small farms are going to become the norm. I would like that to happen. I think we would be much better. We would be much healthier. We'd be much more effective as a society if everyone knew where their food came from. We had a more relationship with our farms and our food. I understand that's not happening tomorrow. Where can we start? Baby steps. As I alluded to earlier, start small. Raise a tomato plant. Get 6 chickens if your HOA will allow. If HOA won't allow, get 6 chickens anyway.
Just not the rooster.
Skip the rooster, get the chicken, or work on changing that rule so that you can have some chickens. Go volunteer at a farm. Find a farmer's market vendor that you can go volunteer with. If you spend even a small percentage of the time that we do liking, sharing, posting, clicking and scrolling on educating ourselves about our food, we would have an incredibly different world. And so I'm suggesting that the time is out there. We just need to reallocate it in our daily lives and put it towards something that has lasting implications, not just for you and your family and your own health, but for other families and other people's health, but also generations to come. And so, again, boiling it down to the one word answer is get involved in food, take those baby steps, and in 10 and 20 years, only our imagination can show us what kind of world we might be living in.
Nice. And I think the nice thing here to take away is farming is changing. I
Yes.
think it is. And
Yes.
I think the nice thing here, too, is this upcoming generation or people that are interested in farming. I think it's an exciting time to get into it because you have those options like social media to connect with your customers. And, have
And
the
I think
ability-
that's so important from an educational standpoint. And I know that, as we talk about college alternative, that as people realize, well, okay, if I don't have to do the social norm in this, then I suddenly don't have to do the social norm in that. And so as soon as we realize we can question, everybody says, oh, you got to grow up, you got to go to college. That's what everybody does. Well, as soon as you think, hey, maybe I don't need to go get a college degree to do what I want to do and have a happy, fulfilled life. I can do it a different way. Well, then suddenly, maybe I don't have to go and eat and shop the way everyone else does. I can do that different too. And so as you start down that alternative road, so I like the name and the concept here, as you start down that road, suddenly doors begin to open everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like you were saying, you're more nimble.
Yes,
nimble.
Absolutely.
Nice.
Yep.
Well, thank you very much, Dan. I do appreciate you taking the time, man. And I know you guys are always busy on the farm, but thanks for taking the time for sitting down and talking with me here. And for all you people out there, we're going to be linking in all the links that he was talking about before to his resources out there and to the buying club and the internship program. So make sure to check the links down below. But Daniel, I do appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Best to you and everyone out there in your search for education and truth. Best to you and blessings.
All right. Thanks, man. Later.
All right. Goodbye, James.
So thanks, guys, for listening to today's episode. So if you like the episode, please kick that like button below. Subscribe. We're always pushing out new videos on a variety of different careers, schools, trades, etc. And that'll just get you guys some weekly updates as well. So constantly be checking YouTube, iTunes, and also our website at collegealternative.net. So until later, bye guys.